think, I don't know.
Yeah.
I interpreted. So did I.
Well, I thought mom.
That's what I thought.
Because my husband.
Yeah, I had a brother-in-law who always wanted to do that top 86 trip. Every night, so. But that's on your list, and it's,
Has Joel tried to log in yet? He's on? Joel, are you on? Joe?
He's not in yet.
Okay. Oh, wait a couple of minutes.
He says he's on.
You jump in, Joe. Thanks. You ready?
He says he's
Get this
on.
meeting to order, so you can all get our discussion and get done. Before I start real quick, I mentioned Joel's here to give us a comment. We're gonna let him jump in after we adopt the minutes, and then if he has to leave somewhere along the way, he can feel like he can sneak out. We don't get too far behind. I do have some communications things to talk about, so we'll get to that in a minute. But, okay, so we got the meeting, so,
I'll take roll.
Yeah, we better do roll.
All right, Eisman.
Yes, here.
Okay, I'm gonna skip one because I'm not sure you're fine.
Yeah, Joe's here.
Joe, you here?
He was.
He was never listed on the.
Joe, are you here?
Oh, we
I guess gotta
haven't-
turn on the mic so we can
He
hear it.
says we haven't joined.
Yeah.
He says that the team is not joined yet.
Oh,
So that's
Gotcha. All right, we'll continue on and see if he's here.
You-
Brish?
here.
All right. Feenster's out. Phelan?
Here.
Mishevitz is out. George?
Here.
And Eisman?
Here.
Did I already ask you? I wasn't sure. Vickers?
Still.
Here,
Okay.
today.
And then we also have alternates Hanson and Clark.
Here.
And in the audience, we will note that we have Joel,
Yeah.
Nice. It's Boots,
I-
right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. How do you spell that for the record, if you would?
B-U-T-Z.
That's what I
Okay.
thought, okay. Okay,
See, did Joe get in?
Joe is in, we're
All right.
not in.
Oh,
Are we in the wrong room?
no.
Didn't hear that.
he joined the meeting with the link he was given, so.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
I don't know.
It's a different link.
Maybe it's just a different link.
I don't, Matt told
Is
me.
that the Teams link, Steven? Okay,
Okay.
well, if,
Can we add him?
can we try adding him?
Share invite?
Maybe like share the invite to him?
Just a second,
I think I can pull that up.
I've got it here.
Maybe.
Okay, it's Joe.Hoinkis, Hoinkis, at lyb.com.
Oh, nice.
Oh. Did Joe get in?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
There
we
we
got
go.
you. Hey, welcome to the meeting.
Okay, we got Joe.
You got marked present. We mentioned we're gonna let, Mr. Boots come give us a quick comment. He said he's got it under 3 minutes or close to it, so Joel, and, yeah, you need to come up to the mic and talk and make sure it's
And it's
on.
A miserable-
So we've got
miserable
a,
connection. I can't understand you.
Can you
Wait.
hear me?
can you hear Joe at the mic?
Try again.
Try again.
Oh, wait, look. Hey, there we go.
All right.
My name is Joel Boots, lifelong resident of Clinton. I want to thank the commission for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've read your proposal for changes to the makeup to our city council. I wanted to speak in opposition of eliminating the ward positions for an all-at-large council. Although the city's population has remained stagnant, the city's footprint has grown significantly with the development of Comanche Avenue corridor, the west end of the city, to the growth along the bypass and the opportunity for growth on Highway 30. Each of the current wards in the city have different unique concerns that their citizens feel should be addressed by the city council. Eliminating the ward positions in favor of an all-large council to trim the council to 5 positions for the reasons of efficiency and/or expediency, I believe is wrong-minded. If you want to keep the citizens of Clinton to stay or become more engaged with city politics and policies, keeping the ward positions on the council and eliminating the large positions will give the appearance of a more representative form of government. I fear that an all-large council will lead to a less informed council to specific concerns of individual neighborhoods, districts, development areas that could lead to a council elected by citywide name recognition only. Addressing the recall of any council member or mayor on the basis of being crazy or rogue, that's what I read in the paper. Those words are left up to interpretation. Without substantial professional proof could lead to costly litigation and embarrassment for the city if someone should need to be removed on that basis. There have been council members and mayors in the past who have proposed policies and agendas that sometimes I wonder under what rock they had crawled out from under. If someone should be in need of a recall, it is best left up to the electorate and the opinions of 5 or 6 other people who seem to have a difficult time agreeing or bargaining with someone. The only exception I can find to such an ordinance is if a person is found guilty of criminal malfeasance or threatens criminal action against any council member or mayor or a city employee, then if them being expelled should be recommended by the city legal counsel with the majority vote of the mayor and the council. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Joe?
You got the information. Well, I guess we also need to go back, make sure we adopt, I thought we adopted the minutes, but we didn't do that yet.
Nope.
You all got the copy of the minutes that Sean brought in. Any notes for changes, corrections, additions? Oh,
Any changes, additions, corrections to the minutes that we have in front of us? If you need a minute to look that over.
Shout out to Rich for helping me that. I was not able to do a lot of the minutes called in last 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. I was out ill, so Rich took over for me. That was good. And did everybody received the link or the email that I got from Joe that night, right? Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hey, just real quick, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure everything works.
Yes, Joe, we,
Loud and clear.
loud and clear.
Perfect.
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Aaron motion, Matt second. We just do it all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Any,
Okay.
anybody opposed? Did some,
Nope.
oh, good, oh, okay.
Steven, I got it real quick. Pat O'Connell did say he was looking for the Teams link as well.
Oh,
So, Steven, I don't know, can you just invite Pat O'Connell?
Under communications, did everyone see the email from Rhonda Kearns?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And hang on, I have some,
I was going to say if you wanted to read it. I think last
Well-
week we read Cody's,
it
or
says,
2 weeks ago.
we'll get to that in a moment.
Yes.
I want to make sure Pat O'Connell's going to jump in that he can get a chance to. I don't think he'll. Maybe he's decided.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Hey, Pat, can you hear us all?
Yes. Can you
All
hear
right.
me fine?
Yes, we got you, and Joe's online, Joe Hoinkes is online too. And if you look at the table, just so you know, Ryan is absent, Bill Mashevitz is absent. So, but move on. If you all indulge me for a few minutes for some updates and clarifications, I have a few comments about some communications. Some I've not had a chance to provide yet. Some are comments related to some of the discussions. So if you just indulge me for a few minutes in reviewing some things that have been discussed, some have not. Some it's a review, but I believe that we should be at least aware of the process to reduce the composition of the council. So if there were steps that we could take to ease this transition in the most effective way possible. It would also, I believe, be helpful for the process to be made public, as it may impact those considering a run for the council this November. I have done some research, and to date, there's no good information that has been found on how it was changed when the original charter was approved. On the issue of the recall elections that was mentioned last time, Cody mentioned it in his input. Early on, I realized this was a legal issue, not a policy discussion. So I asked for some guidance from the city legal counsel. It was mentioned in the previous meeting, so I wanted to get that on the table now. In short, the opinion from the city legal counsel is that recall elections are not legal in Iowa, and the city would likely lose in court. I had that legal guidance that I'll pass out to you in a moment. If you'd like me to read the entire thing for the public, I can certainly do that.
No, I don't think so, but I don't think we ever talked about recall.
It was mentioned last time, Cody mentioned it as a possibility.
Cody's not a member of this commission.
No, but it was mentioned as, so just in case it comes up, the idea of recall was mentioned at the last meeting. Ryan mentioned it as a way to handle if there was a mayor that was, or council members. So it was mentioned. If it's out there, I just wanted to get it on the record, what we could or could not do, if it doesn't come up, fine. I tentatively had arranged for some people with more experience and knowledge about municipal government to speak to us about best practices in various aspects of operating a community government. I do understand the committee's choices not to get slowed down in our meetings, but I believed it is important to learn about best practices from people who are experienced in municipal government in various ways. We have talked about seeking best practices many times. I am a bit disappointed we, as a group, did not want to hear from some of those experts and learn about ideas of best practices we might be able to build on. We're all good people and want the best for Clinton. I would ask you, what would your thoughts be if some citizen or group of citizens came into your business or your job and started to tell you how to reorganize your business or do your job without taking time to learn more about what you do? Some of those people who had tentatively agreed to visit with us did offer comments in writing. Those are included in some information that I'll pass out to you in a second. I also sought the help of a friend, not from Clinton, not involved in Clinton government, about the strong mayor type of administration and supervising the city administrator. This person helped ask other Iowa city administrators through their network how their communities were set up. The comments received were unanimous in that the council was in charge of hiring and supervision. Anecdotally, another friend, also outside of Clinton, asked their friends who happen to be city administrators in Coralville and North Liberty about their community. That response was the same. It was the council hiring and supervising. The use of seeking input from council members has become somewhat of an issue, not a major issue, but some members of the council believed they were to stay out of our discussions, and others wanted input. By accepting that input, we have now opened the door for all to have input. You have Cody's input. I believe you have all seen Councilmember Kern's email. And some of you may have seen Councilmember Schemmer's comments. They're also included in this packet. I do apologize that I didn't get some of this information to you before this meeting, but much of it was submitted while I was out of town, and this is the first chance I've had to get it into your hands. I know there will be more discussion about the idea of the mayor hiring and supervising and even firing of a city administrator. I will say that what I've learned from talking with others and watching municipal governments for years and seeing several forms of government in action, I believe that's not the proper path. When you propose a plan and at the same time talk about needing guardrails, that's a plan full of issues. Some initial issues and comments about some of the discussion I heard. The initial concept will likely take a lot of massaging of current city ordinances reflecting such a different process and administration. I also believe asking a lot of questions now helps reduce the need to use that unintended consequences as an excuse later. These proposals centralize a great deal of power into one office and for local municipal government. Is that the goal? And why is that important? And why is that helping the government operation? What role does that leave for the city council? I believe that's not the best way to provide services to the citizens of the community. From some of the early discussions, I have a few initial questions, probably not the last. There are mentions about performance reviews. That may be more policy and not governance, and better in an employment agreement, not the charter. Also, in allowing a mayor a role in the supervision of departments, does that create more confusion for the staff and the overall operations of the city? If the mayor is in charge of hiring, are you telling that person they can use whatever qualifications and any procedure they want? Can they be the only person to seek candidates with whatever qualifications they choose and however they wish and however they want to interview candidates behind closed doors to the council and the public? And then again, what role does the council play in the city operations? Council could or would be shut out of the process with no input until the name is given to them. Are you looking for a full-time administrative mayor with a chief financial officer, or even no city administrator, meaning no professional city administration in the city? Again, salary and performance reviews are probably better left to employment agreements, not a city charter. Asking the mayor for a lot more time at City Hall because of that supervision duties of the administrator and other city business, will that limit candidates rather than increase interest? Again, what's the effect on the council? The general system of a mayor and council and city administrator duties and responsibilities is working in a majority of Iowa communities. Maybe it's not the system, maybe with some local tweaks, it could work here. Overall, in my opinion, what I've heard from others, and with more municipal government experience than me, that either one or a combination of some types of the ideas so far on the table would prompt qualified candidates to avoid applying in Clinton. I would challenge those supporting this type of mayoral power to find other communities with such municipal government and bring in some of those ideas so we're not starting over. And thanks for letting me speak my piece. And here's all
Was
the,
was that from you? Can I?
this?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. I didn't know if you were reading an email from somebody or if this was
No,
yours. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
These were my comments.
I was gonna,
No,
how
these-
I'm gonna write this down.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
These
What is this?
I think that's a
got
poll.
four? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
We got it. You should have, I didn't count how many pages, but you should have a note from Pat O'Connell, if he's still listening, Pat Callahan, Mickey Shields, some input, there's some comments from other city administrators, Rhonda Kern's email, and Bill Schemmer's email. So you should have all those. And Joe, I'll get those emailed to you, and I'll also get those emailed to Bill and Ryan.
Probably just email, with that, do you want to email that home rule charter email? Just that way, that's gonna be the official kind of record book of that, right? Because the city clerk's gonna
yeah.
keep these on file.
Right, yeah.
Just,
Yes, yeah.
or CC that emails, that way
Right,
it's.
so, yeah, yeah, we'll make sure the city has those for their records.
Perfect.
I think they have some of them already, but, I'll make sure that,
Just so we have them on the record.
so, those are my comments, questions. We can go on and discuss. I don't know where things were left off. Last meeting, if you want a few minutes to look over some of those documents and
Dave, I
Yes.
have a question.
yeah, Joe?
Dave, I know that Sean is acting as scribe, so maybe this is more directed at him. This is Pat O'Connell. I've been approached by a couple members of the commission and told, including you, I think, Dave, had contemplated that as this gets more toward the recommendation stage, that I might be more involved and come to a few of these meetings near the end, provide advice and so on. If Sean could send me the emails of everybody on the commission, that would be helpful to me. Because when for example, I just wrote some initial thoughts on the current proposals. And I thought, rather than just give them to Sean, who reached out to me today, I thought really the whole commission ought to see that, because I'm the legal advisor of the city, and the entire commission should see my advice all at the same time. So I thought I would do that.
Okay. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that, Sean?
Yeah, I can get them.
I mean, I don't care
Okay.
if it comes from Dave or Sean. Sean told me he was
Do that?
he was
got all of our
the
email.
Yeah, okay.
he got charged with being the pack mule and doing all the Scrivener work. So I assumed he was the right guy. Maybe not.
We can put that on the agenda for next meeting if somebody else wants to do it. I'll send that to you.
Well, that's good to know that you were working on it, Pat. We appreciate that. I figured sooner or later you were going to get pulled into our discussions. So, where do you want to pick up?
Well, I don't have, I mean, in the notes that I had from in what we just adopted, you know, the previous ones I kind of had like homework for next. We didn't really, that I recall, and maybe you guys, you were in the room, so like what was the charge for this meeting? Obviously, it was kind of moving on to that next section, but I didn't feel that there was a really good, maybe a wrap from this. You know, I had sent out the email from Joe to the rest of the members so we could kind of see those changes. So I was assuming under that guidance that we were probably still at that section. Maybe
Yeah,
you guys can,
I think at the end of the meeting, we had a few comments were made that with some modifications that we would be able to move forward with something similar to what Joe Hoinkus has written. And I think there was a consensus in the room at that time, but Dave, you were still online and you did attend the last meeting.
Yeah, well,
Oh, you were?
I watched. I wasn't
Okay, so-
able to join in.
gotcha.
So, and again, I questioned some of the things in that.
Well, we talked to you, though. You said
No.
at the end of the meeting you didn't
No, I
agree.
texted
Oh,
Ryan.
yeah. So I don't think he was.
I wasn't able to
For the
join
record.
in the
All right.
meeting.
Yeah, for the record, he
So,
wasn't
yeah.
in the actual
I was,
meeting.
I was watching the meeting. Like some of these others, the Teams link didn't let me in.
Okay,
could
I
watch.
misunderstood, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I texted Ryan. So no, didn't. Well, like I said, some of those questions come up and maybe, I don't want to put, heck, we can put Pat on the spot. Some of those proposals, got them buried here somewhere, and maybe you have them, says, to me, they're talking about performance review, recommend a salary, and those kind of things. That's more, and maybe Sean and Matt can throw a little more experience at that. That's more an employment agreement issue, not a charter issue.
I don't necessarily agree.
We didn't go into very lengthy conversation
the-
about compensation or anything like that. It was
the-
primarily the structure of, as far as who reports to whom and oversight of certain positions. But that, there was no, I don't recall a discussion
Well,
much
Joe's
about
Joe's
compensation.
proposal indicated that
That's
was.
three items.
Yeah,
that
but
was-
in this room, we did not discuss.
Okay, all I'm going by is what,
Dave,
yes.
Dave, if I can kind of help out a little bit here.
yeah, Joe, since you're there,
So we did not go into that level of detail. There was
Okay.
some very brief discussion, but the basic discussion was around the concepts of how the city administrator ought to report. That was the basic part of it. There was even a part that I put in that if you guys looked at the notes, the piece around the mayor proposing who offering up nominating the candidate for city administrator. That was a point that was discussed, and I couldn't capture from the discussion where we had landed on that. So that was and I put it in the notes and in what I sent out to you guys, that wasn't decided. But what we did agree to, at least in the last meeting, was generally everybody was supportive of the city administrator reporting to the mayor, and that if they were going to, if the mayor said, hey, look, we need to fire the city administrator, it could be overruled with a 4-1 vote. That's what I recall from our last meeting.
Yeah.
and
Anybody else
what,
got different
and-
recollection? Let me know.
And I'll be the one to ask questions. Why is
Clarification
that?
here, though, Aaron didn't get this, Joe's email.
I
Did
didn't get
everybody?
today's agenda either.
What, today's agenda?
I have the one that was given last meeting that said propose but do not publish. But I went
Oh.
back and checked my email several times. I did not get today's
You didn't
agenda
get
and I did not get Joe's.
email from me
No.
last week?
Did everybody else get the agenda for today?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
Anyway.
double check your email.
I didn't get
I mean,
the
I'll
agenda.
double-
I'm on the road, so.
I think primarily when I look at the red portion here, from even from the meeting minutes from last week, that we primarily discussed number 1 under Joe's proposal, would be my best way to summarize it. We didn't really discuss much on the evaluation, compensation, things of that nature. We discussed more reporting.
And I'll ask the professor, why is that better?
Why is what better?
Why is the city administrator reporting directly to the mayor?
As I have said many times in these meetings, if you have 7 bosses, you have no boss. It's very clear.
Is that the only, how does that move the community forward?
Dave, he's not he's not an elected official. 2, just as Rich said, he doesn't have anybody supervising his job. Basically, he does as he pleases. Now, I gotta say, Matt's a pretty good guy, gets a lot of stuff done. But this is a guy who's not elected, deciding what to do, and he has nobody supervising him who's an elected official. That's an issue. There needs to be a chain of command, and I think that's what we had all kind of landed on last time.
Well,
There's not a
technically, the chain of
there's not a
command
direct-
is he
there's not a
reports to the
direct chain of
council.
command.
Yeah, what's wrong with the city administrator reporting to the council?
Who does he listen to? Which one of the 7 guys?
The majority.
Okay, so they vote every single time he has to take a decision, and daily
No,
decisions, daily.
they set the policies and another thing, then are you, then in doing this, are you going, obviously, common sense would tell you the mayor is going to have to spend more time at City Hall than mayors have done typically in most communities. If they're going to supervise, that means they're going to spend time here. They're going to have to visit with people. They're going to have to come to City Hall. They're going to have more meetings with the city administrator, department heads. Is that going to limit the pool of
Dave, you made
potential
exactly-
candidates?
Your
The
comments are
interesting
exactly what
thing
we're talking
about, okay, go ahead. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was gonna say, your comments are exactly what we're talking about. So is the city council meeting and coming there all the time to talk and supervise the city administrator? No.
The thing that is an interesting scenario just with any city administrator, and I don't know how it works in other cities, I have to be forthcoming with that, but the packet of information that is given to the council members is prepared by the city administrator. So if you have individuals that are elected officials that do not do research and look into things, it can be a manipulated situation. So you are manipulating what your boss is getting. I don't know if that's a home rule charter issue or a policy issue, but my point being, if I prepare something for Rich here, and then he's my boss, but the only information he's getting is exactly what I prepared for him, there can be a lot of manipulation done there.
That's your council member. Again, that's whom is elected to the council.
But when you're asking how something makes another situation better, if we have somebody that individual is reporting to, somebody that has committed to the electorate, I will do the research. I do want to see our city succeed and move forward. And they're keeping that check and balance. He cannot on his own, or a mayor, he or she cannot say, how we discussed the other day, you're fired. It would be, I'm recommending termination. A supermajority would have to overrule that.
I note that, but and I'd ask bigger business people than me. If you recommend to fire somebody, are your underlings going to overrule you?
Council is not underlings.
In the setup, you got the council has no,
The mayor has no vote. The mayor is the representative for our city.
But the mayor is directing the city administrator. So therefore, the mayor
Yes.
is in charge.
As the chief
Is
executive
it
officer,
that-
per our ordinance, right?
But
But
that's.
anything that changes goes before council.
But if the mayor's recommending firing somebody, you think the council is going to overrule that?
I think they would if they thought that was the proper thing to do.
That's their job.
Yes.
That is their job.
But part, you've given the entire they have no they don't, the mayor is the one who directs the city administrator, so the council has no say-so.
Do you agree that the scenario I played out could happen?
I suppose it could, but then I don't know, that's easily fixed through a policy procedure. It isn't, because you could have, it could be
So who's going to overrule their boss, being the city administrator,
well,
to
if-
change
if
the
you-
packet
if-
that's going to the
But then
council?
the council could help have input on the agenda preparation.
I have a couple of suggestions, if I may. We voted on the preamble and the powers of the city to proceed as we went down point by point. And we haven't done that with the council, and we're already jumping ahead to the mayor.
I noted that.
I would like, and I think that, looking at the minutes that I voted to approve, I'm not sure that we decided forever and ever that we didn't want to hear from outside people. I think we decided at that particular meeting that we didn't want to try to shoehorn it in. I think it would be helpful to specifically, maybe Mickey would be the one to come in next meeting, specifically, in the state of Iowa, how many cities have the city administrator reporting to the mayor? I would like to know that.
And my best guess is, from what maybe Pat knows, I've heard of
answer
two,
is-
maybe three.
The answer in the experience that I've had, I've worked with about 40 different city councils, is that I've never seen a city administrator report to the mayor, hired by the mayor, supervised by the mayor, terminated by the mayor, and then an override by the council. The model that everyone's adopted since the early 80s has been that the council hires the city administrator, the council terminates the city administrator, the council supervises the administrator. I have some knowledge of what the council's struggling with. I understand the problem. The problem is that the model that we currently have in Iowa government is the professional manager model, where the day-to-day functions of the government are run by a professional that's supposed to know everything about Iowa law and know how the best practices of the government are and so on. So the elected officials take a more high-level role, and they pass the laws and they provide policy under which the administrator operates. And so it's frustrating when the administrator runs the government and you don't like what you see. That's really where the tension always arises, is the council has a tension because the council thinks, how did we get into this policy position? And so the council can vote those measures down when they come forward, and that's their power, and then they have to send it back for revision, send it back to staff for revisions. That's generally how the government runs. Well, what I've suggested in the past, because the council does have a role in supervising the administrator and needs to actively do so when the administrator is not doing what the prerogative of the council is. There's an annual review that's in the contract of all administrators. Every administrator hired in the state, that'll be in the contract. What I've suggested is that not only do we add language that states that additional reviews at the prerogative of 2 or more members of the council at any time may be required, and that further that the administrator be required by his signature on that contract to waive the requirements of 21.51I and permit that and request that review be conducted in closed session. So there's a standing permission to go into closed session. Other cities that I represent have done that. What that allows is if a city administrator is not performing, what that does is it allows the elective body to bring that individual into closed session to discuss that performance, even a specific insular issue, and get that corrected. And that's what I had been recommending. Now, the problem is, I understand exactly what everybody's arguing here, and I'm not the politician. This is your decision, not mine. So I'm only going to tell you what I practically know to be true. Because I write so many of these contracts for administrators for cities, and I have to be involved in negotiations when they hire them. The city, my fear is that the city of Clinton will not ever be able to attract a good, qualified city administrator if we go to a mayor supervisory role that's being envisioned here. And the problem is not Scott Madison. Anyone would work for Scott Madison, okay? He's a reasonable guy. He listens. He's good at his job. He could probably do it if he quit his day job, right? But that's the level of supervision you'd need if you really were going to supervise the city administrator. The problem is not that. The problem is when Scott rides off into the sunset because he's too busy with his day job, and we don't hire the mayor, we elect the mayor. We'll get a single issue mayor in office who does not have the qualifications to even understand what he's looking at, and that's going to be the model we're stuck with. And what the practical problem with that is every city administrator, one of the things that I like about talking to Decker Plain, I'm not saying the committee should slow down its deliberations. I'd have no opinion on that. But as Decker Plain would probably tell you that there ain't no way I would take a job in a city that had that model. Not in a million years. Because I can't control, at least if I'm answering to 5 or 7 bosses, I have some job security. Because all it takes is the wrong guy in the position of authority to whom I report, and I just moved my family from Wisconsin to Iowa, right? And I'm out. Because the mayor has recommended my termination, and 4 out of 5 have to vote to override. I would see that in a contract, and I would walk away. I think that's what Decker Plain would say. Either that, or he would say, I'll do it, but you're going to need to give me a year's worth of severance, because I'm just not going to work under that model, right? You hired me because I'm a professional. I went to school for this. I know how to run the government. I know how to do the day-to-day stuff. If you're not going to trust me to do that, I'm out. So I'm being fairly emphatic about it, not because I want to persuade you one way or the other. I just want to tell you what the other side of the equation would be, because that's probably the truth that we're looking at.
If I may, this is Rich Phelan. I'd suggest that there's some middle ground here. The concept of having the mayor more involved doesn't have to go to the extent that is being discussed here, and I don't think that was ever what was intended. Looking for my notes that I wrote, and I can't find it at the moment, but there's still, first of all, by City of Clinton ordinance, we already have said the mayor is the chief executive officer.
That's every, I think, not to interrupt, but I think that's in every, the mayor of commands is called the chief executive officer.
All mayors are called that.
Yeah, if that matters to anybody, I just think that's a wording issue that's in the state code.
But Rich makes a good point. If it's the pleasure of the whole rule committee to make the mayor more involved in some fashion, as long as it doesn't dissuade highly qualified administrators from coming here, and it creates a good working relationship everybody can live with, then the committee should wrestle with Rich's ideas, whatever they may be. I haven't heard what he has to say yet, but what I'm afraid of is if we go with that extreme model that's being proposed in writing, I think that would be bad. I think that would be very hard to get anybody qualified in here.
So
I can
also-
imagine scenarios where you would say that for example, the administrator will meet with the mayor, brief the mayor on at least a weekly basis on what's going on and so on and so forth. Those kinds of things would all be reasonable to include. I don't know if they need to be in the charter, but that would be excellent policy for sure, because the mayor is a liaison to the council typically, and that would be helpful.
And I'll throw this out there, and I haven't thought it through, so don't hold me to this. And Pat and Chip says, would there be anything to prevent, for example, the mayor in this, say, in the hiring process, if that's an issue, the mayor to have a vote in the hiring and/or the dismissal of a city administrator? They don't have a vote on other issues, but somehow could we develop that in the charter that gives the mayor a little more say-so in the process of the city administrator?
That's a possibility, but
No, just
a couple of
an idea,
comments
just-
that I want to make.
Yeah.
First of all, I've got in front of me the Leclerc city ordinance regarding the terms of office and the mayor and the powers and duties. And it says that the mayor is the chief executive officer and will supervise all departments of the city and give direction to the city administrator and/or department heads concerning blah, blah, blah. So we're not going down totally on charted path here.
Right.
What I wanted to just say on an opinion on kind of what's going around right now is, obviously, Pat O'Connell has been involved in more of these than most people. But I also know that across the state, this similar conversation's going on because the current system's not working. So whatever changes that means, it might be different from anything anybody else has done in Iowa. That doesn't make it wrong, because there are issues in all kinds of cities where they're looking at their current system saying, we've got a problem and how can we make it better?
I had something prepared for the last meeting, but I didn't present it. I think I may have handed it out, but I don't know that you have it for sure. But I didn't present it because Joe had put forth his ideas. Now, let me just read this to you. First of all, I'm incorporating from the ordinance, the terms of what it says in the, as far as chief executive officer, act as the chief executive officer of the city, presiding officer of the council, and except for the supervisory duties which have been delegated by law to the city manager or city administrator, supervise all city officers and departments. That is already in our ordinance. This is what I'm suggesting, and as far as the charter is concerned, the mayor is the official representative of the city. The mayor will act as the primary point of supervision of the city manager or administrator. And then under that, I have subsettings with input and advice from the council. At a minimum, annual reviews of the manager or administrator will be required and conducted by the entire council in closed session as appropriate. And Pat, when we get down and we finally agree on things, we got to get you to help us with language. But additionally, the mayor will meet with the city administrator at least quarterly to review goals and objectives. Feedback from these meetings will be reported back to the council and, if appropriate, be conducted in closed session. The city administrator is the primary supervisor of all the various city department managers. However, the mayor may, from time to time, require various reports and status updates to be reported to the council and the mayor from the department heads. I went on to say the mayor may attend city department-wide staff meetings and give guidance in cooperation with the city administrator. The mayor will advise the council on the hiring and removal of, the mayor will advise the council on hiring and removal decisions of the city manager or administrator. The council will make final hiring and removal decisions. So I suggest to you that that's perhaps a step back from what some of you may think is a cliff. So
I'd ask a couple of questions, because and probably nothing, Pat can chip in, says I believe the mayor could ask for that information today.
Isn't
I-
happening.
Well, that's not the charter's fault. I believe the mayor could ask the city administrator for those kind of reports today. Also, you have opened the door slightly, and all it takes is a crack. Because if you are allowing the city the mayor to to negotiate with the city administrator about department heads, you have opened the door to more confusion.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. It says in
No,
there.
he said the city administrator will supervise all city officers and departments.
But then also, he meets with the department heads, with the mayor, and will talk and will consult with the city administrator. I believe that was in your.
I will-
I can
I'm
shed
just-
some light on this. I mean, what
Okay.
happened here, this is the history of our code, which is similar to what you see in other cities. Before we went to the administrator model, we had some standard language because the mayor used to be much more actively involved because by necessity, we needed a chief executive officer, right? And so that language is old, it's been there a long time, and so they add the language that says the duties, except for the duties delegated to the administrators. That was the easiest way to amend the code. Matt may remember, this is how this kind of thing happens. When you amend codes and you don't want to go back and rewrite every part of them, you add language that's qualifying, and it says, except for duties that are delegated to the city administrator by this code, right? And they just never went back and changed any of that. So there's conflict there, depending on how you read the language. So that's part of the reason why that's happening, is because before, I can't remember when we started with our administrator here, but before that, we were a mayor-council form in the traditional way, which 90% of everybody was back before the 80s, right? And the mayor was the chief executive, and if the mayor didn't have time to come down to City Hall, things just kind of ran through the clerk, and the mayor was either active or not active, and it depended on the mayor whether or not things were actually being managed, right? Which led to the city manager model. And then when we bolted it on, we just added it to our code. Then we did later code updates, and that never really got cleaned up, even though we did a major code update under, 4 managers ago, I remember. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is the idea behind this is that the day-to-day management was supposed to be shifted to the administrator when we hired an administrator, and that the mayor would have higher level functions. He still has certain powers, such as, for example, it still says in the code that in the state of emergency, he can direct the police, and do things like that. So declare an emergency and, exercise the police powers of the city and things like that, which I think all that should stay, and I don't have any problem with that. And one thing I would suggest that this commission commit to doing is, look, if you're going to have a city administrator vice a city manager, let's get that corrected all throughout the code. That's not really this commission's job. I mean, that's maybe something for us to clean up later, but I think a recommendation that comes out of this is, if we're going to have an administrator, let's say administrator, not manager, throughout all these documents. Because those are different animals in the legal scheme of things. The manager is a more powerful position, and if you look at Fort Madison's manager description, it's different. Right? They have the manager, Burlington has a manager, and the manager language is different, and it's more powerful than the administrator.
Pat, this is Sean. This is one of those things that's come up, I think, at each meeting, and we wanted to clarify, whether that, at times we've used it as interchangeable. And is that something that this committee or the commission needs to clarify for the council going forward? Or how do we go about that? Because it seems, you look at some of the ordinances and how it's been set up previously, it can be confusing. And I think it needs to be, if it is on us to correct it, then I think we should correct it. And before we finalize this document, because, one
I
meeting we're
agree.
saying manager and the other we're saying administrator. And I think it just leads to more confusion.
If the word manager appears anywhere in the charter, we should change that to administrator, and that should be recommended.
Okay.
And then you could also add an editorial comment that the rest of the city code should be changed accordingly.
Okay.
Pat, if I may, it brings up a question, if I may ask, is it, Pat, would there be any value, and I don't know what the rest thinks as of, if we come up with some suggestions for the charter itself that should be changed? Could we, or should we, or is there any value to come up with a list of ideas that we recommend the city council change policy procedures to include this, that are not really charter material, that could be better dealt with in the city code? Is that of any value, or should we put, like I said, I believe there's some things that maybe we could, I could see being of value, when you talk about, performance reviews more often and those kind of things might be better policy issues and not charter issues. And maybe I'm wrong, but there could be other things as well that this group thinks, hey, this is a great idea, but it's not charter worthy. Would that have any value?
Well, I will just say that the legal purpose of having a charter is to define the basic structure of the city government. It's not to define at a granular level how the government's going to function. That's what the ordinances are for. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the duties of the administrator, we would say in the charter that we are a council manager form of government with a professional city administrator, right? As defined in the code, further defined in the code of ordinances, right? In the charter. So the way all these charter cities are structured is they'll have a charter that has that basic form of government, like the Constitution, so to speak. And then when you go to the code, if you look at the definition of the council, it will define in the code itself the duties of the council. Usually, the only thing the charter says, it will say that the council shall have such duties as set forth in Iowa Code Section 372 point, I can't remember the reference to the council off the top of my head. It'll say that. And as further defined in in the Code of Ordinances, right? For the mayor, it will say what the mayor is for. And then it'll have the same description for that there's an administrator. But then a lot of these things that are being discussed really should be ordinances, in my opinion, within the model of the mayor, council, administrator form of government that we've selected.
Pat, I'd like to jump back in and get back to something that Dave brought up. You asked, couldn't that happen today, that the mayor asks for these things? And what happens and the administrator ignores them?
Well, I think what would happen is if the mayor has a code reference that says he's entitled to these reports, he says to the administrator, I'm pointing to you this code reference that says you're required by law to give me this information.
Well, it's not in the code today.
And if it's not in the code, then technically he could say, well, I got a lot of things to do. I don't know why I'm required to generate that for you. Personally, if I was an appointed official and I was directed by the mayor to do something, I'd probably just do it. But that's, I guess what you're asking is what's the legal authority? Well, if there isn't any, then I suppose he could theoretically say, I don't know why you're telling me to give you that.
The central issue that I feel several of us agree with on this whole commission thing is the accountability of the administrator. And if we don't address that, I think we've missed our charter.
Again, Pat says, like, it goes back to my question is, are there things that we could or should suggest the council update the code to reflect that?
That's not what we've been asked to do.
No, but is
Not
it?
saying we can't do it, but
Yeah, well,
it's
that's
not
what I'm
we've
asking, is if there's things that we don't feel belong in the charter, but would make better city
Well, I
operations.
feel this does belong in the charter.
Well, that's, you know, that's what he says.
So if you're saying like maybe if you don't feel that it's necessary in the charter, but provide a guide, you know, like a guidance, an additional addendum saying, we also feel these are, because here's the thing, you know, 20 years from now, if they revisit this in 10 years and you get 9 other people up here that are like, oh, they did their job 10 years ago, we're good with it,
Yeah.
right? But then 20 years from now, it's a
I
whole
don't
different
think
story.
a recommendation like that would probably go anywhere. I kind of agree that if it's something that we feel strongly about, it should be in the charter in several regards. And I see that Matt keeps flipping his switch like he wants to say something. So Matt, what are you chewing on over there?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Pat, this is Matt. That idea that you were talking about earlier of, you know, the council's ability to call for a review with 2 council members, and that you're seeing that kind of issue across the state, would that be something that would be more in line with an ordinance as opposed to the charter?
Well, you wouldn't
Or
even
what-
need it. You would just put it in the city administrator's contract. That's what I've been doing.
Do any of them have it in the ordinance?
No.
Their employment.
But like Brent Hinson and I have
you seen it?
created well, Brent Hinson created a model contract, and I modified that extensively in different cities that I use. Brent's pretty knowledgeable about this stuff. We added that to a recent city contract where it stated, you shall report, you know, to any requested, it says in the contract that the city administrator will also submit to such other and additional reviews as the council may direct, and you shall waive, or you shall request a closed session pursuant to 21.51I, and your signature on this document shall be standing permission to do that, right? So we added that to the contract. And then
Pat, says-
go ahead.
if I may say, real quick, if in short says, can you explain, because the question came up, the employment contract city administrators have? Question came up, I think I mentioned, that's a standard thing for, I believe, for city administrators, that's pretty typical. Can you explain a little bit about that in brief, since we're, you know, 5 o'clock, we try to get out of here in an hour?
I think we're getting away from
Well,
the central point.
But that's what he's talking about, some things that,
Well, I don't agree.
well,
The provision of an annual review would be in every single administrative contract. I've never seen one that didn't have that unless it was 25 years old and nobody ever looked at it or something. But all modern contracts will say annual review. What I've added to that, because I think council should be actively involved in supervising the administrator, right? This is Rich's concern. You know, he wants there to be accountability. So what we tried to do, because what we didn't want was the administrator saying, well, all right, contract says annual review. I don't see why I should have to come in front of you and be reviewed. Well, then that makes it difficult, because councils can only act by ordinance, resolution, or motion while in open session, right? So how are they supposed to perform their proper oversight function of an administrator if they can't get the administrator to cooperate and show up to the damned review, right? So we added that mandatory language in the contract, and that solved the problem.
Not in Clinton.
It's not in the Clinton administrator's contract, correct, and I've recommended that it be added. The other thing, I will tell you one little quick war story. We did that in a city, and when the administrator didn't show up, we fired that administrator immediately.
Well, I'd
Because he
suggest to
didn't
you
show up.
that
It said in his
annual is not,
contract, you had to show up for your review, and we scheduled it, and he didn't show up, so we fired him, right? That's how you accomplish contractual accountability with the administrator if you feel that the administrator is not responsive to the elective officials, right? I'm not in any way saying that Rich's suggestions about involving the mayor more are bad. That could also be done. But that would really be effective if we did that. But that doesn't have to happen in the charter review committee. It could just be a recommendation that you provide. I mean, you could do it, you could discuss it, you could provide a recommendation, but you don't have to change the charter to reflect that. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it because it's not really appropriate in a constitutional governing type document. I went on and on. I apologize.
well,
No, I think that's a valid point. It's more of an operational, and the council needs to deal with that, right? That's not our privy, and, unfortunately, if that's happening now, I don't know if it is, but then that's their problem. It's not really, I mean, it is our problem reviewing a charter, but I don't think it should be in a charter, really, because then we're getting into the weeds of,
Day-to-day-
I mean,
day-to-day
we're
operations.
opening Pandora's.
1,000 pages.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the guidelines of having the mayor having some of that power, I don't want to say some of that power, but what are those guide rails that we have to provide to make sure that when the council does say, hey, yes, this is what we want to happen, that the 5 or 7 bosses, right, are getting their answer. Because they can act, but only in open session.
For next meeting, can we, just to switch gears temporarily, can we vote on the changes that we recommended for section 2.03 city council? Like we did for the preamble and the powers of the city?
Maybe next meeting we go back, we put the mayor, of course, I don't push the mayor discussion off, you meant go back to because there were some other ideas I think that I had, and maybe Ryan had too, for the, to add to the council section some extra verbiage from some of the other charters about a few of the issues. It doesn't add anything to the charter, it just adds a little, what I think is a little clearer language in the council section. Should we go back next meeting and do those?
My point is that, to me, it's kind of like a pyramid. And so 2.1 is the base, and then 2.2, and then 2.3. And if we haven't decided exactly how 2.03 is gonna be, then it seems not the greatest idea to start hammering on the details of 2.04 and then 2.05. That's just my.
We voted on a little bit of that,
We did
but
some.
not all of it.
Well,
We did some, but not all.
Well, the mayor.
And I think it was, we were waiting to talk to Pat O'Connell about how we would lay
The legal
out.
side of
how-
reducing the council, was that it?
Yes,
Well, I got the impression from the last meeting that I just, like to mention, I think it's worth to at least know the process.
yeah.
Whether
So I
it's
think it
not
was
our.
because we got to number 4 in section 2.03, and it talks about terms being 4 years, which we were all okay with, but then the conversation was, okay, how will that play out?
How do we make
And
it?
that's why we never voted on the 2.03 as a whole under that's what I think,
Yeah,
how we kind of.
we talked about the legal part, but people seem to kind of,
So Pat, do you think it would be pertinent if you could kick us off the next meeting, if it suits your time, the timeframe of that meeting, to walk us through that? The adoption of
On
that,
that-
and then that way we can kind of
and we can
do
focus
that
back
little
on the
straw poll
council.
vote or whatever, Ryan, you guys were calling
Yeah.
it,
And I think-
get that general consensus and
Wasn't
move
the
on from
question
that?
of, can we do that in the home rule charter, was like the very basic,
Well, yeah,
and then how that would.
how that works, and how
Yes.
that works with the charter. Pat,
So
can you,
that's why we then went on to mayor,
Yeah.
if I remember
Sure.
correctly.
can you help us out next meeting, Pat?
When is it?
Well, that's the next thing we'll throw, real quick, so I don't want to run everybody too long. Our initial decision was to do the first and third Wednesdays through the month of June. We have now reached that point. Do the first and third Wednesdays at 4 o'clock continue to work for everybody? And we'll just kind of continue that schedule until further notice? Or is there something else that, after doing this for a few months, figures into your schedule better?
it feels like a habit to me.
Now that, you know,
So June
I'm-
18th is when you want to do the next one?
so our next meeting would be June 18th, right?
Yep.
4 o'clock here at City Hall. Check your calendar, Pat. You and
I
I'll
got it.
email you or something later.
Send me the Teams invite and I'll be there.
Okay,
Also, I don't think I have a full, unless Maybe I didn't look at everything Sean sent me all the way through yet. Did you send me
think Joe
all the
just sent-
proposed changes, Sean, or just a little
No,
snippet of
Joe,
part?
whatever Joe forwarded me was only like 2 pages long,
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to this. Scott was keeping track of the Word document,
No, I
and
would, I will, but anyway. yeah,
that
I
has
would.
not happened the last 2 meetings,
I,
so.
well, we haven't had an update that's been approved yet.
Well,
Yeah, Pat, we'll
that's
get
not-
you what Scott has, changes have tracked so far to date, and then what we discussed the last meeting. And then I think we should continue on that same document.
Yeah,
is what you're
we need to
saying,
get
yeah.
that document. If the mayor's
It's-
not
it's-
gonna, if the
it's
mayor's not
here.
gonna be here, we need to have it so that
Yeah.
we can.
I've got it.
You do,
At least what
So
we
I think-
formally approved.
correct.
I think I'm getting emails from you.
That's
but
not what I'm
from
talking
Lisa.
about.
I'll
So I
email,
think on your initial group email, something's wrong with my email, because then when I contacted you, you sent it to me and I got it fine.
did you talk to me or Sean?
Yes.
Me?
No, you.
Okay.
Remember I said I
Then-
had,
Yeah, you email says,
yeah.
I'll check,
Thanks, Pat, I
don't-
gotta go.
Yeah. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everyone.